So I welcome you all to this session. So my name is Raghu. Let me introduce myself to you. Uh, as I said, my name is Raghu, and I have close to 13 years of experience, more than 13 years of experience, all in the area of SAP security and related technologies like GRC. I have worked on. I'm a certified PIM/PAM consultant for CyberArk. I have worked on multiple greenfield and brownfield implementation. I also have experience on AMS environment. I have worked on numerous rollouts and upgrades. So that's a brief about me. So before we begin, so I would like to know about you, your name, where you come from, what is your experience, what you have been doing so far, and most importantly, what are your expectations out of this course, right? So I would like to take few minutes from each one of you to understand your background and your expectations towards the course. Okay, I think we are good to start. Okay, so in during this course of presentation, you can stop me anytime. You can ask your questions. Okay, so there is no restriction that you have to wait or anything. You can just go ahead and shoot your question, and I'll try to answer them, all of them, most of them at least. Okay, so let's begin. So this is the agenda which we have. So we have split it into two parts. One is the HANA database security. The other one is UI5 Fiori security. Okay, so in today's day and world, so being a security consultant is not just about PFCG. Okay, so the world is changing, so everything around it changes. So the expectation now is that you know the database security as well as the application part of it. Okay, so both goes hand in hand. Earlier, in just say 5 years ago, a database administrator was someone who had a different skill set altogether, and someone in SAP security had a different skill set. Now, being a security practitioner, you are expected to work on the HANA database part, okay, as well as the application part. So that's where this course come into play. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to cover the database security part as well as the Fiori security, which is the new application part of S4 HANA. So we are covering these two so that we can balance, and we believe that the audience here are already working on SAP security. So this is like an add-on course to whatever their skill sets are already. Okay. So to begin with, we can start with Fiori or we can start with database security. It's your wish. Okay. But in this agenda, I have just put database security first. So let's go through this. Initially, we will introduce about what is HANA, what is S4 HANA. Probably this question always troubles people here. What do you mean by HANA and what do you mean by S4 HANA? We'll try to answer those questions. Okay, what makes the HANA database so special? What makes it so attractive? Okay, so we will initially look into the architecture very briefly. Okay, all these things are planned in such a way that it becomes appropriate for a security practitioner and not so heavy and not so technically inclined, which is required for a basis administrator. So it's a balance between that. So I have made it very simple to understand, and what is required for a security practitioner is very much highlighted in these topics. Then we will look into what are HANA tools, what is HANA Studio, how we set up HANA Studio, what is a DBA cockpit, what do you mean by a web IDE. So we will look into those things. Primarily, we will be working on HANA Studio, but I'll show you the DBA cockpit and web IDE as well. Okay. Then we will move into the elements of DB security, which is information views. So when you're securing something, it becomes very important for you to understand what you're securing. Okay, how you're securing. Okay, the technical parts come to later, but you need to understand what is an information view. These are basics of database. Information views like attribute view, analytical view, calculation view. What are these? How do we build them? Okay, we will start from the scratch. We will build our own database. We will construct our own data. We will load our own data onto the database, and then we will move into creating the views on top of those tables or on top of those data which we have loaded, and then we will again see how we can secure it. So it will be a complete A to Z of DB security. Although there will be many more things which will be relevant to a basis consultant, but for a security consultant, what we have included is what is relevant, right? So we will start from loading the data, then we will build the information views on top of that, then we will build privileges to secure those views or queries, right? So that is the step-by-step process which we'll be following. Then after the information views, we will look into what are privileges, what are the standard privileges, what are the analytical privileges which we can build, right? We will look into all those in detail. I have not included all the headers here. Okay, remember it's just a short, but be sure that we are going to cover every question which you can come across, or at least we can try and get the answers for all of them. Okay, then we will move into roles. What are HANA DB roles? These are primarily different than your PFCG roles, right? So it's built differently, it looks differently, it works differently. So what are the roles? How many types of roles are there? What are, then we will move to user management. How do you create user privileges and role assignment to the user? Who are the ideal users of a DB? Okay, there is a very limited set of users who actually log on to the database. So we will look into those aspects as well in HANA DB security. Then we will move into very interesting Fiori security. Okay, so firstly we will try to understand what is Fiori. Okay, what makes it so special? What is different in Fiori which was not there earlier, right? So we will look at that into introduction of Fiori. Probably in today's session we will talk about introduction to Fiori first when we start. Okay, so we will look at introduction. We will see what is Fiori, what it contains, why it is so desirable in today's market, and why there is such a demand for Fiori. We will try to understand that. Then we will move into technical aspects of deployment. Okay, how many types of deployment are available? How a client can perceive Fiori, right? The very top level, how he can perceive, right? That is deployment. How do you deploy Fiori? Okay, there are two ways of deploying: hub deployment and on-prem deployment, which is also called as embedded deployment. Okay, we will see look at those two concepts, and the forthcoming topics are all relevant to deployment. So some of the things may change depending on what type of deployment you're using, right? Like the PFCG authorization part, which you can see at the right bottom of the screen right now. So that part changes when you have a hub deployed system compared to an embedded system. So we will learn in parallel of how exactly we are going to do that. Then in the next topic, we will look into end user perspective. How does Fiori look for the end user, right? What is a launchpad? What are the options given to the user on the launchpad for personalization? Okay, what is a Fiori designer? Okay, we will also touch upon the theming part. Okay, all those are covered into end user perspective. Then we will move into more technical, more security inclined topics like Fiori apps and its design. We will look at what are Fiori apps, how many types of apps are there, what are the differences. Okay, what is Fiori apps library? So I believe you might have heard of Fiori app library, or maybe you have logged into Fiori app library, but how do you extract the information which we want from Fiori apps library becomes very, very important. Fiori apps library is the repository which is provided by SAP for Fiori deployment. Okay, so we will look at that. Then we will more dig deeper into what are catalogs and groups. Okay, we will try to understand how these work in tandem so that we can create the user experience which we want. Okay, we will look at catalogs and groups. All these are the Fiori aspect. Then we will move into the authorization for it, like how do your catalogs and groups merge into your PFCG role. Okay, what are the authorization required on your HANA system side, and what is the authorization required on your gateway side, right? We will look at the difference. Okay, this is specific to hub deployment. On-prem deployment, both are the same. We only have one system, something like that. We will look at the technicalities of it. We will look at OData concepts. What makes OData so critical? What is OData to begin with? And all those details related to OData service. Then we will look into deployment approaches. Okay, so you have Fiori. Okay, it is different than the deployment model, the hub and embedded on-prem. This is specific to how the client perceives Fiori once they want to go Fiori, right? Once they want to have Fiori in their system, there are multiple approaches which they can follow. You will understand in detail when we hit this topic. Okay, there is a showcase approach, there is cherry picking, there is Fiori first, there are hybrid models. We will look at all those four. Then we will look into advanced tools, right? Fiori 3 HANA 2020 has provided a lot of new tools and applications which were not there available earlier. Like we have some of them which we will discuss here were also available, but not used to the extent which will be used with Fiori 3. Okay, like we will see into activate methodology, how we can use and leverage the SAP activate methodology in deploying Fiori for our clients. We will look at application cards. This was available in the previous versions as well, but what is now, what is different in application cards, how can we control them? So those aspects we will learn. We will also look into upcoming future topics like spaces and pages, right? Spaces and pages are only available in cloud as of now, but in 2020, probably in SP2 release or SP1 release, they will be introduced into the on-prem systems as well, right? HANA on-prem. So we will look at what are Fiori spaces and pages. Okay, although we may not be able to see it in the system, but I had the privilege of working on cloud HANA system, but cloud Fiori system. So I have screenshots and I can explain you how exactly it looks like. Okay, we will look at spaces and pages in brief. Then we will look at what is SAP's roadmap for Fiori. Okay, how does SAP look at Fiori for the clients? What do they tell the clients of how Fiori is and how they can perceive it in their organization? So we will look at that as well. Then troubleshooting. Troubleshooting, I have put it in the last, but it doesn't mean that we were only going to touch upon that at the very end of the course. Troubleshooting, it comes throughout our course, because this is not just a theoretical class. We are going to perform these actions, we are going to build our roles, we are going to build our catalogs, we are going to use the troubleshooting whenever we run into a problem. So we will do it together. So it's a more techno practical kind of a course which we have thought of. So you will be getting the access, and I want you guys to practice with us so that you can come up with more questions, and so that we can discuss in the next class, or probably can work out in the weekends, see how it works out, and you can come up with questions and we will try to answer it together. So that's the brief about the agenda. That's the agenda which we have thought of for both Fiori and HANA DB. Any questions about the agenda before we move into the demo part? I mean, for the first session, what I had thought of, I'll introduce you to Fiori and HANA DB both. So it'll take some time. So before that, do you have any questions on the agenda? Raju, no, that's good. Tanuj, Yalini, Geeta, Jayant.
No questions, Raghu.
Great.
Yeah, nothing from my side as well.
Okay, so does it mean that you guys are happy with the content, or did you think of something else and it turned out to be something else? So I just want to know. Do you think that this is what you're looking for? Good. Okay. Great. Okay, I take that as a yes. I take that as a yes. So let's continue. Okay. So we will start with introduction to Fiori. Okay. And then we will move into briefing you about what database is and what makes HANA special. So it is basically introduction to both Fiori and HANA DB. Okay. So let's start with SAP Fiori. Okay. So what is SAP Fiori? Anybody has any answer to this, and what makes it so special? Any answers from the team?
I feel
One more
it's a
thing
UI
about
technology
me. Yes, yes, correct. It
which
is a UI
enhances the
technology,
user
web-based
experience.
tool. Definitely,
Yeah, it
yes.
enhances.
It's not a
Yeah,
tool, Raju. Yeah, Raju is saying that it is a web-based tool. It's not a tool, it's the entire solution. Okay. It is the solution which is web-based. I totally agree. And it is a UX solution which SAP has come up with. And trust me, this is going to redefine how end users look at SAP. Okay. Okay. And then we will talk about how do we how does it look when we compare it with our traditional GUI systems. Okay. And how was Fiori on ECC, and how do we have Fiori now in S4 HANA? We will look at what is a launchpad in this session. For today, this is what we are going to cover. Okay, so we will look at what a Fiori launchpad is, and we will conclude it. Okay, so what is SAP Fiori? Okay, SAP Fiori, Fiori means flower in Italian, which means it is beautifully designed. Okay, so it is very good looking UI technology, if I can say that. Okay, and it redefines the entire experience, how the end user perceives SAP. Earlier, user had to go through a lot of screens on the SAP GUI page, right? The boring screen used to come up. You need to enter your transaction code, and then some form would come up. And to enter the details in that form, to know the details, you need to say /n, go to some other transaction, take that detail, come back to this transaction, put that information. It was like that. I mean, people were used to it because we didn't know, so nothing else was apart from it, right? It was, people got used to that kind of thing, right, using the SAP GUI screen. Now SAP Fiori empowers users to move away from that particular experience into a new web-based experience. Okay, and this is the new UI UX strategy for SAP, and Fiori is the front runner for that particular strategy, where user experience, UI is user interface, UX is user experience. So the whole idea of having SAP Fiori is to enhance the UX, right? Enhance the user's experience. Okay, and interestingly, this is part of your S4 HANA suite. Okay, S4 HANA suite it comes with the S4 HANA ERP system, like your ECC. We call it S4. Okay, and we have the HANA database. We have various other add-ons. Okay, this comes as a package of that particular suite. So what makes SAP Fiori so special? Okay, there are a couple of things which makes it very, very interesting. Okay, firstly, entirely mobility driven solution. Okay, the user interface earlier was restricted to a computer screen where the user has to log into a SAP GUI and log into that server or the client and run the his business or whatever, do his transactions, right? Now it has moved from that monotonous way of performing your duty onto a more mobile way of doing SAP, right? So this is web based, it brings mobility to your, so that's what it does, right? So accessing on the go, accessing your work on the go, you can have your Fiori apps on your phones and tablets, right? Which is made possible only by Fiori. Okay, you can access your work on your phones. Okay, that's the speciality of Fiori, and it gives freedom for that boring screen of SAP GUI. Okay, and it's entirely new. It's like moving from Windows 95 to Windows 10. Okay? It's such a big difference. Okay, I'm not sure if anybody has worked on Windows 98 or 95. I have. I started with Windows 95. So Windows 98 was like tile based, or sorry, icon based operating system. Then we moved into a more tile based approach in Windows 7 and 10, right? It is similar to that. Okay, it's pretty much advanced, and it is in line with the latest technology in what is that, AI and machine learning as well. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are combined into how Fiori has evolved in what we see today. Okay, so that is what makes Fiori special. Okay, now let's see the little comparison between how we used SAP before and how we will be using SAP in Fiori. Okay, so let's take the menu for example. This is how the menu looked, easy access menu looked on your traditional GUI. Now this is how it looks in SAP Fiori. Okay, it is entirely web based, and it has attractive tiles and captions, and you have information on the face of the tile. So everything here, let me take a pointer. Okay, everything you see here, okay, in the square box, it's called as a tile or an app, and it's like you get some information even before entering that app. There are multiple informations which you see here, right? In even before you enter that app, see here there are alerts as well. It will tell you whether you need to go into this app or not. Okay, earlier it was not possible. So this is the interactive way of doing your day-to-day work. Okay, let's take another example. So let's say creating a purchase order. So this is how it looked like. Okay, to enter the quantity, to all these data, the purchase organization, purchase group, company code, if there is something which is unknown here, the user had to switch screens, go to some other transaction, fetch the data, come back to this screen, enter the transaction, and then execute this. Okay, This is how it was earlier, and look at what it is now. Okay, all these are clickable items. You can see here. Okay, this is the specialty of Fiori. This is called in-app navigation. So from one app, you can move to another app with just a click. You just click on this, you will get the information what you want. Okay, you can click on this, it will take you to some other app. It is called as interoperability of the apps. Okay, that is made possible on Fiori. User don't have to. This is all about user experience. Okay, how user experiences SAP Fiori, or how user experiences SAP is enhanced by Fiori. So now you see here all these are clickable items, and everything relates to maybe referring to some other app, or maybe referring to some other information which they want to, right? So it is made life very easy for a user, for an end user level. Okay, this is the comparison, a very generic comparison between traditional GUI and Fiori. Okay, let's see what is the difference of having Fiori on S4 HANA system, which is on the HANA database, which is the latest version, and how Fiori can also, remember, Fiori can also be deployed on ECC. Okay, but there is a wide difference of how Fiori works on ECC and how Fiori works on HANA. Okay, let me give you one example of such. What I did here, I went on to Fiori apps library. Okay, so how many apps do I see here? I see 12,800. This was taken yesterday. Okay, this number was taken yesterday. It might have been for 12,800 today. They may have added apps today as well. Okay, so there are chances. SAP is evolving every day. Okay, so this was taken yesterday, and it says 12,798 apps are available, ready-made to be deployed. Directly take it out of the box, plug it into your user system, configure it, and users will be ready to use it. Okay, no development whatsoever. So these are ready-made apps. Okay, now I can filter these based on multiple entries, multiple criterias. Okay, now what I have done, I have selected this on our ERP, EHP7, EHP8, whatever was before HANA, right? Before S4 HANA, whatever versions were available, I have selected that and see how many apps are it gives me. It gives me 283 apps applicable for your ECC. I mean, the older versions of SAP, right? So where is 12,000 and where is 283? There is a huge difference. I mean, 283 is not just a fixed number. Okay, there may be multiple other apps as well. It may come, whatever it may be, it is less than 1,000. Okay, it is definitely, it's fraction of what is available for HANA. A fraction of it is available for ECC, though the entire power of Fiori cannot be realized on the older version of SAP ERP, which is ECC or EHP or EHP7 or EHP8, right? So that's the point which I'm trying to drive here. So the power of HANA can be realized only when you have your S4 HANA system. Okay, you can see here, all these can be deployed on your HANA, but not all of these can be deployed on your ECC. That's the major difference between having a Fiori system on top of HANA and having a Fiori system on top of ECC. Okay. Now let's take a look at what a Fiori Launchpad is. Okay, this is just a brief. We will take a deep dive into what Launchpad is when we come into our end user perspective part of the agenda, right? We'll take a deep dive into that. But for now, I just wanted you to introduce you to what Fiori Launchpad is. Fiori Launchpad is like the front page for every end user. Okay, every end user, every business user, Fiori Launchpad is the first page which he will see. Okay, not everybody will be seeing the same page. Everybody will have their own customized Launchpad based on the roles which we assign. Okay, based on the roles we assign, we will just listen to the statement. We will see how it is done later. Okay, just listen to what I'm trying to say here. Every user's starting point will be called Fiori Launchpad. It may not be same for every user. It differs from user to user based on the roles which we assign. Okay, so this is how it looks. Okay, so we assign them roles. Okay, and there are multiple options available on the Launchpad itself for users. Okay, let's look at what the options are. Okay, so here what we do initially, we map them based on the business roles. and then we bundle them into groups. And there are multiple options on top of this as well, right? Like this, you can search, okay? You can see your user assistance, right? This is like your help, which is in user, but it is much more advanced than what help used to offer us. There are multiple action menus here, like you can find the apps, you can search the entire enterprise, okay? Not just the data on for your apps, but you can search it. It can act like a, as your intranet portal as well, okay? That's the beauty of you having Fiori Launchpad, okay? Then there is in-app navigation. As I said earlier, you can navigate from app to app within a click, okay? You'll see any tile here or inside. I'm here sales order app. This is the sales order app. I'm inside the sales order app. Then there is a link over here. I click on here. It gives me more links. It will list down all the apps where you can navigate, right? You don't have to switch your screens or go to /n a different transaction or /o a different transaction. No, that era of SAP is gone. Now it's all about interoperability, in-app navigations, okay? So that's how the Launchpad is designed. This is just a brief about Launchpad, and it's a brief about how Fiori is, okay? So in upcoming classes, we will take a deep dive into what Fiori is. I mean, as explained in the agenda, we will go through each and every topic so that you can relate to these things very easily. Any questions before we move on to HANA DB? I very much like dialogues. I say that say this in every session. I don't want to have monologues. I would be very happy if there is an interactive session where you guys can ask me stuffs and I can answer you, or I can ask you stuff and you can tell me give me the answers. So when there is interaction, it brings in a lot of, it generates a lot of interest in the sessions as well. Okay, if you guys are very silent, then I may be thinking there are multiple ways my thought process can go, right? One is I can think that you don't understand anything, or the other thing is, oh this guy is boring, I know all these stuffs. So these are the two extreme thought process which I may have. So just to stop me from having those thoughts, I just want you guys to explore yourself. I mean, express yourself. You can ask any questions or at least comment on anything. So I would like this to be a dialogue, not a monologue.
Sure. So introduction was really good. Few more thing I want to ask you, like, will we be
Sure.
covering implementation approaches as well as, like, in case we get
Yes.
some implementation project, how will be
Yes.
like, what will be our plan?
Correct. Yes. Very good question. So let me go back to the agenda very quickly. Okay. See here, deployment is
Yeah.
nothing but implementation of Fiori, right? All these are
Okay. Yeah.
approaches. We will take deep dive into this one, and even deployment options. This is also your implementation. So what, as a Fiori consultant, what will be your standpoint? How will you communicate? What will be your talking points? Okay, we will talk through all those.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll definitely, but a very
Yeah.
good question. So that's a very good thought process which you have before coming into the session, I would say, right? So that's how you should
Yeah.
look at Fiori, because it is extremely new. You will not get a AMS kind of a project on Fiori. Whatever you will get now will be implementation. Okay, people are going into
Mm.
Fiori now, which means people will start deploying Fiori. So what will be your jobs and responsibilities here, roles and responsibility of a security consultant in a Fiori project, right? So we will talk about those. Definitely talk about those things.
Yeah, because there are, a lot of ways to implement Fury, and if I work in some project, there will be different Fury. Change the project, there will be
Correct.
some different kind of Fury. So it's a little bit
Correct.
confusing.
Correct. You don't.
Yeah.
I'll clear your confusions. I have worked on 3 Fiori deployments so far. Okay, I have worked on
Okay.
showcase approach. Okay, I have worked on cherry picking. I have worked on Fiori first as well, which is the toughest. Okay, now I am in my 4th implementation where again it is Fiori first. Okay, and hybrid model, there are many things which you can combine these things and get into a hybrid model. So I will share all my experience with you guys.
Okay, yeah. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Not till now.
Okay, great. So let's move to HANA DB part. Okay. So as I said earlier, okay, gone are the days when people, a security consultant only have to know PFCG and SU24 and SU25. That's gone. No one will be looking for, no one will be expecting you in their organization. If you go with the mindset of, hey, I know PFCG, I can build roles, I can design, I can secure. No, that is not the expectation in today's market. In today's market, the expectation is that you know application side, you know SaaS products like IBP, cloud products like Salesforce, right? You know Fiori, you know GRC, you know HANA DB as well. Okay, this was never there earlier in a security consultants or a security practitioner's portfolio, but now with SAP HANA, this has come into our bucket. Okay, everybody expects that you know your HANA DB security. You work on it or not, it's a different story when you go into the project, but the expectation is that you know about the basics of how do you secure your database. Okay, it will be very important when probably you are upgrading yourself to GRC 12. Okay, HANA DB security plays a very important part in securing and connecting your DB to your GRC 12 system as well. Okay, so that's why this section where we give you about the bare minimums of HANA DB security. When I say bare minimum, we are covering almost everything for security. Okay, everything which a security practitioner should know about database. So in today's session, I'm going to give you a brief about what HANA is and what is difference between S4 HANA and HANA. How many of you know the difference between S4 HANA and HANA? Any guesses?
Yeah, yeah. So
Yes,
HANA
please.
is just a database, which is enhanced version,
Hmm.
which have good processing power. You know, we can inject processing logic in the database and get the details out of it. However, S4 HANA is a complete suite, which includes your application as well as database thing.
Absolutely right. This is the exact answer which defines S4 HANA and HANA. So we will talk about these things. Okay. So let me introduce you guys to what makes HANA special. Okay. There are multiple things which makes HANA special, but I have picked up a few things which are very, very important. Okay. So let's see what is HANA. HANA is a database. Okay. There is no doubt about it. HANA is a database, but it becomes something more than a database. We will know what it becomes. It becomes into a platform rather than just being a database. Okay, what makes it stand out from the rest, right? Like Oracle or DB2 or SQL, they are also databases, right? Oracle is also a database. What makes HANA special? HANA is not just a database, it becomes a platform. We will see that in this upcoming class today, right? In the demo session today, we will see how HANA becomes a platform. But for now, let's understand HANA is a database. It's an acronym for High Performance Analytical Appliance. SAP promises high performance and they very sure delivers on the high performance. So how the high performance is delivered is because of the underlying technicalities of HANA. Okay, let's look at few of them. Okay, so whenever you Google search HANA, the first word which hits you is in memory. Okay, hey, it is in memory database. It is in memory. What is in memory database? Okay, let's try to understand what is in memory database. Okay, I have tried to explain this with a very basic explanation which I can come up with. Let's say there is a person who's a office going worker, a government official. Let's call him Praveen. Okay, so he's a government official. What his work is, whenever people come to him with questions, okay, he goes to a nearby file rack. Okay, he takes the relevant files from that rack, okay, or the books or the records from that rack. He brings them on his table and he answers the query. He looks for that detail which the customer has asked him, and he goes through it and he gives the output. Okay, that's what Praveen's work is. Okay, now in this scenario, the rack is my database, right? What Praveen does, he takes the file or the record from the database, he puts it on his table so that he can look through it, right? So the table becomes my random access memory, my RAM, okay, because it allows me to go through the records faster. And Praveen is the processor, okay. This is my 3-tier architecture, right? So Praveen is the processor, random access memory is the table, and rack is the database. Now, this is how every database system works, okay. Now, SAP thought, okay, how about I bring the entire database onto the table? Okay, will it not be easier for Praveen to go through? He don't have to get out from his chair and go to the rack every time, right? How about I put the entire books on the table, right? But again, there is another question. There are so many books, right? The better way of doing it is compressing every kind of information which we have, right? Compressing the data and give it on Praveen's table in a condensed form without compromising the integrity of the data. Okay, when I say without compromising the integrity, the data should not be lost, but still I have to compress. It's like removing all the empty pages from the files, removing the cardboard bundle from the file rack, right? Throw it away. It is of no, it holds no data, right? Remove the unused pages. Okay, if there is a blank space left in between one of the page, you fill it up, then remove the rest of the pages, something like that, right? That's the compression, physical compression of data. Now, that's what SAP have thought as well. Okay, so the idea here is compressing the data, point number one, and putting it on the memory. Now what happens is Praveen has condensed form of data. Every information is available right on his memory, right? It makes access very, very faster, exponentially faster than what it used to be there in the earlier versions of or any other database. For example, this is only in HANA. In memory is only in HANA. Now your table becomes your in memory, right? HANA, Praveen is still the processor. Table becomes your in memory. There is the database and the memory has merged into one. That makes the access really, really fast. Okay, that's what in memory database is. Okay, there are many other technologies which defines what data has to be moved onto the memory, and we are not going into those details, but we are just going to understand what in memory database is and how it helps the speed of the processor, speed of the database. This is how it works. So the data, although not entirely, but most of the data is put on the main memory itself so that the access becomes faster. Now, memory is a very expensive thing, right? Memory is very expensive. So how do you manage that memory becomes very important. Now there are multiple ways of managing that memory and the speedy access of your answering your queries, right? Whenever you throw a query, it has to fetch the results instantaneously. How does it do? Okay, there are multiple ways of doing it. So the basics for all those is the storage mechanism. How is data stored on the database? There are two ways of how data is stored. So how do you look at data? You look at data in an Excel format, right? You look at data in columns and rows, but that's not exactly how the data is saved on the database. Okay, you may look at the data in an Excel format, but that's not how it is saved on the database. So there are two ways of saving data. One is row based storage, one is column based storage, and HANA optimizes the column store mechanism. So let's look at what row and column store is with an example. Okay, firstly look at a row store. Every database system runs on row store mechanism. Even HANA supports both row and column store, but most of them do not support column store at all. Okay, so let's see what row store mechanism is. Okay, I have taken a simple bit of information. Okay, this is my table. There are 3 rows and 3 columns. Let me take a pointer. There are 3 rows, 4 rows and 3 columns, right? I have the roll numbers, I have the name of the student, and I have the book which he has borrowed. Now, as I said, this is how you look at data, but on the database, this is not how it is stored. So if there is row store, this is how it is saved onto the database. So every row becomes one record. Every row becomes one record. Now the first row, 1 Rohan C++ becomes one record, 2 Suresh Java becomes second record, and 3 Samir SAP becomes the third record. Okay, this is how it is saved on the database when you select row store. Now let's throw a simple query at it. I want to know how many, so I want to know who are the students who has borrowed books. Okay, I don't care about their roll numbers. I don't care about their books, what books they have taken. I just want to know how many of them have books issued under their name. Now, this is the simplest query. Now, what the processor has to do, it has to go through all the 3 records in order to get the 3 names, right? I have to go through first record and select Rohan, pick it out. Second record, take Suresh out. Third record, take Samir out. So the processor has to go through all the 3 records. Suppose I had 50,000 students who have borrowed books. I need to go through 50,000 records in order to get all the names. The query was very simple. I want to know the names of students who have taken books. I don't want to know the books. I don't want to know their roll number. I don't want to know their father's name or phone number or email address. I don't want anything. Even though I don't want these 2 data, I still have to go through the process this data, right? The processor has to go through this data, even if I don't want these 2 information, 1 and C++, I don't want, but the processor has to go through this record. Now, this can be overcome with column store. Let's see what column store is. As the name suggests, the data is saved in terms of column. So the first column becomes one record, the second column becomes the other record, the third column becomes the third record. Now, if you run the same query, the processor has to go through only one record, right? Okay, it may seem very trivial, right? Row and column store, but think about this. Okay, the number of columns is always finite. Okay, you have fixed number of columns, right? You have fixed number of headers, right? For example, if take a citizenship or an Aadhaar database, you may have 200 columns, that's all. Okay, there is a finite limitation to the number of headers you can have. You can have name, last name, first name, middle name, third name, fourth name, fifth name, email address, phone number, secondary phone number, tertiary phone number, wife name, first wife name, second wife name, whatever, right? The limited number of headers, but the number of rows is unlimited. The number of keeps increasing in the rows, right? It is equivalent to the population which keeps on increasing, right? But the columns remain fixed. So that's why column store is optimized. Now, that is point number 1. The second point is, in any query which you give, not all columns are required as an output. For example, in this very example, I didn't want to know what are the books they borrowed. I just want to know their names, right? In that case, the number of parsing, the number of processing becomes very, very less. Okay, that's how a column store works very, very good when it's combined with the compression and other. We will look at compression next. Any questions so far? Row store and column store?
No, Raghu.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's look at the third part which I wanted to concentrate, which is compression. Okay, so compression in HANA is like what SAP promises is 15x to 20x compression. What do you mean by 15x to 20x compression? Which means if you have a 20 GB data, it is compression to 1 GB. That is 20x compression. If you have a 15 GB data, it is compression to 1 GB. That is 15x compression. Okay, the 15x to 20x is the promise made by SAP HANA. So let's look at how it is obtained, right? Now, compression is not unique to HANA, but it becomes very, very a potent weapon when it combines with in-memory and row column store mechanism, right? You will see how it works, right? What is compression and how compression makes an impact on the database. Let me take an example here. I've taken a similar set of data. Okay, I have students, name of the students, roll numbers, and the books they have borrowed. Now, if you see, this is not the roll number. Okay, don't be confused. This is just a number. Okay, a row number, whatever. Now you see there is a repetition of students here. Rohan appears twice. Suresh appear twice, right? Even the books, there is repetition. Java, 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 SAP, SAP. There is repetition. The optimum way of compressing this data is to remove duplicates without compromising the integrity. How do I do that? Right? I don't want duplicates, but I still don't want to lose the information. I still want to know Rohan has borrowed 2 books. That information should not be lost, but I want to get rid of the name Rohan being saved twice. That is the challenge. Okay, I don't want to lose on the information that there are 3 Java books which have been borrowed, but I don't want Java to be repeated thrice in my database. That is challenge number 1. Okay, challenge number 2 is about the data type. Now, if you look at this is an integer, right? This is a string. These two are strings. So this is basic knowledge that string types take a lot of data. String type takes a lot of data. Say integer takes 2 bits of data. This will take 50 bytes of data. Just an example. Okay, it may not be technically right, but I'm just giving an example. It is exponentially higher than an integer type. A varchar type or a string type is exponentially higher than an integer. So will it not be great if I convert these strings into integers and remove the duplicates? Okay, I will achieve both. Now, how can that be done? So that will be done. That can be achieved by converting this information into vector tables. What is a vector table? Now I am assigning one integer to every unique name. In students, I will get one more vector table which is for books. Okay, I got 2 vector tables. Now what I'm going to do, I have removed duplicates here. Remember, I have removed duplicates and I have assigned a vector. Now I will change those strings into integers, right? And I will replace that into my original table. Now if you see, I have all integers. Now to reproduce this data, I will have to combine these 3 tables and run the query against these 3 tables. I don't care. The data is less and I have column store. I have in memory. My processing is almost faster, exponentially faster than other processors. So I don't mind processing through these 3 tables. Right? It may look very, very nominal when the data set is less. Let's take a look at an example where we have real world example. Okay, it will tell you the difference. Let me take a real world example here. Suppose take population of Karnataka. 5 crore people stay here, right? If I have to save every name, just the name, okay, if I have to save every name in the database, every name would take 50 bytes of data space. Now to save every 5 crore names, I would be spending approximately 350 gigabytes of data onto my database. Now let's do this. Let's take out the duplicates. Okay, and how many unique names will I get? 50 crores, 5 crore people do not have unique names, that is for sure. Let's say 50 lakh people have 50 lakh names are unique. Okay, 50 lakh names are unique. So what I'll do, I will convert that into integer and save a vector table. And then what I will do, I will change this kind of a vector table information which has only integers, right? So what I'll get, 23 bits for the integer which is saved and 20 GB, 200 MB, sorry, 200 MB for the integers which I have saved and 20 GB of the unique name vector tables. Okay, vector tables will be where this is the vector table, right? I only get one vector table which will take about 20 GB, right? So total number of space would be how much? 21 GB. Look at the compression rate here. You are saving 350 GB of data, you're compressing it into 21 GB. It is more than what SAP has promised, right? 15, 20x, 15, 17x, it will come around 17x or something. So that's how compression works. And this works brilliantly when you compare with the power of in-memory database, in-memory computing and the column store mechanism, right? Okay, any questions so far? Any questions on in-memory, row-based, column-based? Okay, so initially I had planned for covering the architecture part as well, but I'm going to skip this part. I will take this in our first session. I'll just go through. This is what I had planned for explaining the architecture, right? This is where I was going to explain how HANA becomes a platform. Here in the traditional system, you have application layer separate from database. Now, my HANA platform, application and database cannot be separated. It's one and the same. So what I have only the presentation layer. So from traditional 3-tier architecture, we are moving into 2-tier architecture where HANA becomes a platform. Okay, this is briefly. I also wanted to briefly touch upon MDC, multi-tenant data containers. Okay, but I'm not going to explain owing to the time. So I will explain it in our first session probably. So this is, yeah, this is what I had in mind. This I wanted to explain, but I'll explain this. It will take 15 minutes for me to explain this in detail, and owing to the time, I'll probably explain this in our first session. Any questions? Any questions about Fiori, or any questions about database security? Any questions about the agenda which we have? Any things which you want to add or remove, or do you feel it is okay? Any improvements, any suggestions for me? Am I going too fast, or am I not understandable? Any questions, comments, compliments, everything is welcome.
So Raghu, I heard about CDS views. So will there be so we need to secure it as well, right? So it comes in which
Correct.
area?
It comes in the database part about CDS views. We can briefly touch upon CDS views as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So what are CDS views? So it is very important. What are CDS? I see what the initial thought process of having this course is to explain about the bare minimums. So CDS is a little advanced. So, but if you want that, we can include that.
Okay.
Raju, Yalini, Geeta, Jayant. Raju says he's good. Jayant, Geeta.
Raghu, you will be giving notes,
Then,
no? Hello, Yalini.
notes in the sense you will get recordings. So of every session will be recorded, and you'll get the recordings. You can go through them as many times as you want to. And if you have questions, you can. I'm always there.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. This is great. I mean,
No problem. Yep, Geeta. Sorry, I didn't get you. Geeta, you had a question? Okay. So that brings us to the end of this demo. I hope you liked it. Okay. So hopefully we'll see you again in the first session. Suresh?